Sports Business Insider Rick Horrow, a special digital exclusive extra piece of Beyond the Scoreboard. And we talk about Sharks and SAP and the successful, amazing run after 25-year history beyond anybody's expectations. And a guy that had a architectural piece of that, by the way, an SAP partner, but CDO, Chief Digital Officer, Jon Becher. Jonathan, A, thank you for being here. B, what the heck is a CDO?
Fair enough. Well, so I guess CDO could stand for lots of things. Chief Digital Officer.
Okay.
So the idea is, how do we take advantage of all the digital media, all the digital properties, the fact that we're all walking around with cell phones in our pocket. That's how we interact in our business lives. That's how we interact in our personal lives. We're used for instant gratification. What does that mean for how work and life is going to be in the future? That's a big scope, but that's
it's a big scope, and you have a big responsibility. But from a digital perspective, you'll elaborate on these numbers. But I know it's 32 countries a year ago, and now you and your digital operation reach over 190.
That's right.
And the number that I heard, and I'll steal your thunder because I found it amazing. 76.
We don't talk about thunders. We're here in the Bay Area.
Well, after Durant, it doesn't really matter anymore. Okay, it really doesn't. 76% of the world's transaction revenue is touched by an SAP system, which is an incredible number. So talk about your business.
Yeah, so SAP might be the largest company that people in the Bay Area don't really know that well. We have more than 300,000 customers around the world. You heard us, we're in more than 200 countries now, so that number grows every day. But here's some fun facts that the viewers might like, which is, if you like chocolate, 79% of the world's chocolate is manufactured by SAP customers. If you like beer, some of the viewers might like beer, 77% of the world's beer is manufactured by SAP customers. But it's not about drinking and eating stuff that's good for you or have some fun. Turns out that we counterbalance that a bit. So 83% of the world's running shoes as well. In fact, the fact that kind of blows me away, even though I've been in this company for a while, is 73% of the world's transactions touch an SAP system. So we're inside almost every company you know.
So when you say inside, which is an incredible setup for kind of an ability to explain what that means, inside means data gathering, data analysis, data transmission, taking an evolution into a new age, a whole combination of things. Explain all of that.
Yeah, so the heart of what we do is we help companies do what they do better. In fact, for a long time, our tagline was run better. So if you're good at operational stuff, we help you get better at that. If you want to understand your customers better, or you're a sports team and you want to understand your fans better, we help you do that. If you need to move goods from point A to point B and you want to know how to do that most efficiently, we help you do that. So whatever your goal is as a company, there's technology that helps you improve on it. It's not just data, but it's operational systems as well.
You gave us an example in some of the material you presented us, hot dog buns from one concourse to another, and how that all works. Now, what does that mean as far as product efficiency? How does it help the consumer? How does it help the business?
So let's start with the sports analogy, and then I'll show you how it works in the business as well. Say we're in a late inning of a baseball game or in a hockey game, and you go to a concourse and you want to get a hot dog, and they run out of buns. That's not very good for a fan experience. But more often the case, there are still buns in the building. They're just someplace else. So you'd want a system that could predict, based on all the data points, based on the past games in the building, that says you need more buns here, you need less there. The fans coming in for Philly eat more hot dogs. I'm making that one up because I don't know if that's really true or not. And based on that, you could decide how much of the goods go where. And they're the fans happier because they get his or her hot dog. Same thing works in a business. If you're building a piece of an equipment, you might outsource some of the manufacturing, and there might be some of that offshore, some of that onshore. What happens if there's a tornado and you can't get that? How do you get a backup plan? What happens if you're trying to ship from point A to point B and there's some kind of outage? We help make sure that the goods you want arrive when they need to get there. That kind of optimization is what SAP does.
Jon Becher, Chief Digital Officer, and CBA, the Chief Bun Allocator. Gentlemen, it's amazing, the diversity. Boy.
Rick, now the guys back at the office are going to start calling me that. I don't know.
CBA, I understand. You get what you pay for, though, is the bottom line. And so consumer-oriented as well. Obviously, it's very important to business. But what it sounds like is it enhances the consumer experience, enhances the fan experience. Talk about the similarities between business and sports.
Yeah. So let's think about it. If you're a sports team, you try to get the best athletes on your team there. If you're a business, you try to find the best employees. Now, the definition of business is not always the smartest or the one that can jump the fastest, is one that fits in your business. It's very parallel. So we help you figure out who's the best employee for your team. Same thing. Managers, what do coaches do? They try to figure out how to get the best out of their employees that they have. Managers need to do that as well. Let's keep going. If you are competing against your competition, what's the edge? How can you learn more about another team Same thing in a business. How can you learn more about we look at social media, we look at past historic patterns, we give businesses insight to so lots of different parallels. You know what the one big difference, though, historically has been? On the playing field, you get instant feedback about your decision. If you decide to put in a left-handed pitcher, you know whether that was a good decision quickly. If you decide to substitute a player on the ice in hockey, you know. In business, sometimes you don't know right away. So what we're doing here, and here's what really makes us different from any other software company on the planet, is we're trying to make the same kind of instant feedback that you get in sports happen in business. We're trying to help business go from periodic daily updates, weekly updates, to live business. We want to give you live pulse of what's going on.
And the thing that strikes me as interesting is the diversity of your offerings, because the material talks about 55% of the orders from large customers, 45% from relatively small entities, and the 190 countries that you are now a juggernaut representing: Peru, Samoa, Oman, Liechtenstein. Now, those are in very different places in the world. You offer diverse solutions across culture and across scale, which is unique.
Yeah. So, in fact, most people who do know SAP think about us for the large companies, because we're top 25 brand in the world, and virtually every one of the top 10,000 companies on the planet use us. But it turns out what most people don't know is if you're a startup, if you're a 10-person company in a garage, there are plenty of those here in the Bay Area, you can use our technology as well. And because we're all over the world, we build the solutions so they're local. There are special tax regulations in Brazil. We know how to do those. There are import-export controls in Oman that are different there. So we build locally, and everywhere we go, we're SAP in that country.
You started with humble roots like everybody else did. How did you get so big and good and unique?
I'm not that tall.
No, I'm not even talking about you, God bless, but the company generally.
So our four founders, when they got started, they made one decision, which has been the best decision. We've stuck with it for the last 44 years. We're essentially 44 years old. And nothing matters except for what the customer needs. Don't get stuck in meetings. Don't get stuck in figuring out how your technology works. Don't get stuck in inside-out thinking, as we sometimes call it. In the end, if you build a better product the customer wants. So, you know, the old joke of you have 2 ears and 1 mouth, make sure you use them in that relative proportion. Right. We think a lot about that. What is it? And we use the customer signals in our own business to decide what to do. And if you just focus on the customer, nothing else matters.
Interesting perspective, too. Do you worry sometime about being all things to all people? Again, you're so diverse, and you serve so many masters, and you do so many things well on such a large scale. How do you focus?
So, 2 answers to that. One is we have sort of a divisionish point of view, which is those that focus on HR problems, that's our Success Factors division, do that better than anybody else on the planet. Those that focus on procurement, buying goods, our Ariba division, do that. But what makes us unique, so that we're not just a loosely federated, is we do integration. When I talk to our largest customers, they say the reason they come to us is we're the single hand to shake. I guess the negative way to say that would be the single throat to choke if something goes wrong, but hopefully most of the time as well.
Do you do more shaking or choking?
You know what? Like every sports team, like every business, we make our mistakes occasionally. And so I think sometimes the customers talk to us loudly and say, we don't like when you do that, but we try to listen. So the good news is we do more shaking than but you know, we make mistakes too.
And you sound like, as you said, you're well qualified at listening, which sounds like the most important thing. Let's segue to sports for a few minutes.
Indeed, we love
golf,
sports.
Formula One, sailing, cricket, American football, it says, obviously written by an international audience.
Probably.
Baseball, tennis, basketball, regular football, let's call it soccer. Are you kidding? Look at all the diversity that you have. Talk about all of those entities and what the common themes are there.
Yeah, well, so you talked about the diversity we have in the business world. We have the same kind of diversity in the sports world as well. And what unites them is a passion for their fans. In the same way what unites a successful business is passion for its customers. And the underlying common theme for that is data. So I'm a stats guy by background. I love stats. I'm a sports guy. I think I joked with you off camera that if a Tiddlywink game broke out, I could probably have some fun watching that Tiddlywink game as well.
You were the kid in high school that nobody would go out with, so you were sitting at home on Saturday night scoring Tiddlywink.
Thank you for saying that on camera. That's
Sorry.
That's really good.
Sorry about that.
No, it's quite all right, Rick.
Okay.
And if you think about fans like beyond the scoreboard.
Yeah.
Fans want to know not just what they see, but they want the stories behind the game. And we can bring those stories alive by talking about what happens there. So I'll give you a couple of examples. We'll get to the Sharks probably.
Yeah,
but the Sharks is a local team.
Right.
But the Sharks have had some wonderful moments in their history. In fact, one of the wonderful moments was the Game 7 winning goal of Jamie Baker beating Detroit. There was another good, wonderful Game 6 winning goal by Thornton. Remember the slide on the ice, Game 6 against LA? Those are great. The fans voted. What do you think a couple months ago, the fans have collectively said, what's the top most favorite moment in all of Sharks history?
I don't know. You tell them because you told me.
Yeah, fair enough. It wasn't either of those two things. It turns out it was Thomas Hertl's. 4 goals in 1 game. I think it was his 3rd game as a pro. This amazing between-the-legs goal. It shows us that a lot of the new Sharks fans are millennials, and they may or may not have the history of that. And those kind of things means that you can then change the way the Sharks reach out to the community. You can change what you actually do because there's a very strong, hardcore audience for the Sharks, which are teenagers and 20-somethings.
So being able to listen, fan experience, tailoring specific solutions, and having a monopoly on how to analyze data, obviously, are the keys to your success. Tennis example, you talk about analytics for coaching. My game needs a lot of help, as everybody else's does. But talk about that as one of your keys.
So one of the nice things about the WTA, the women's tennis, is that they're one of the few leagues to allow technology during the match itself. So literally the coach who's on the sidelines, who's watching the game and getting real-time streaming analytics to her or his iPad, is allowed to go between points and tell the tennis player, by the way, you're leaning a little bit to the left. By the way, you're putting a pressure, or your opponent is hugging the line, or your opponent is rushing the net, and you can adjust your next serve, you can adjust your next volley in the game itself based on what you learn. You can do this in other sports, but other sports haven't yet allowed the technology on the sideline and during the game. And what's nice about that is that same data is later available to the fans as well, so they can learn more about not just first serve percentage, which we all know is a big key to winning, but maybe volley percentage, maybe the percent of the time that it's in the front court, et cetera. Those statistics, the advanced, tell the story of why people win.
And you tell the story in a very admirable way across all of these platforms, and kind of inside business, inside baseball, so to speak.
Yep.
How do you make decisions to maximize awareness, meaning your partnership with the Sharks is above reproach and is fantastic, and the SAP building plus the foundation and the money you give for charity and also for foundation building is incredible, but you also deal with sponsorships as a traditional kind of ROI metric, and you decide how to do dasher boards and how to do sponsorships of leagues and teams. It's a very complicated issue, isn't it?
It is. One of the nice things about the Sharks' long run is we also have a relationship with the NHL. For those people who don't know, you can actually check out nhl.com/stats, and you can see some amazing statistics of what's happened in the league history as well, which means we had extra visibility during the Stanley Cup playoffs, dasher boards, et cetera. That's all good for the visibility of the brand. But to be fair, we want this to be an authentic representation of what we do. Yeah. If it's just for more bulletin boards, that's good. We want more people to know about us, but we want authentic stories of how the Sharks got better, how the 49ers got better, how Madison Square Garden got better, how the WTA got better. The sports teams can tell stories because they get that instant feedback about how they get better. So if you don't mind, I'll tell you a quick story that has to do with business.
Go ahead.
A few years ago, I was working on getting small businesses, restaurants, dry cleaners, mom and pop shops, to stop making decisions based on their gut, but making their decisions based on data. And that was part of my job I used to do. And every time I met with a mom and pop, they would say the same thing to me. You know what? I've been running this business for 5 years, for 10 years. My father, my mother ran this business, I don't need help. My intuition is better than your data. And I would try to show them charts and graphs and all the things. So no, data knows more than your intuition, and they wouldn't listen to me. So then when we got into the sports business, and we showed them that they would think that bringing in a left-hander on 3 days rest in the bottom of the ninth in a cold weather game after traveling, and they would say, I know this guy's going to strike him out. And I would say, the data says he's not going to strike him out, and then they didn't. That would have breakthrough. That would get people to realize, oh, maybe the data is smarter than my intuition. And that has been a fundamental impact on that small and medium business size. And
a mixture of both, because obviously you need to sell in something that's not going to threaten people, and that's exactly part of the whole deal. So finally, where's the business of data analytics and distribution and the business of SAP, where's it in 10 years?
So there's a saying that people are starting to come up with is, it used to be that every company had to be a technology company. It doesn't matter if you're a retailer, it doesn't matter if you're a bank, it doesn't matter if you're the government, but you have to use technology to get better. I think in 10 years, we'll all realize that every company is a data company. The single most important thing that they do is data about their customers, data about their operations. And if they don't use that to improve themselves, they'll be yesterday's news.
Chocolate, beer, hockey, hot dog bun allocations. The guy does it all.
I have a fun job.